Yeah?
Yes.
Yeah, good. Speaking of dogs, I have to tell you what I remember about Ursula, big dog lover. She had an Irish setter, registered Irish setter, who had a litter of 21. Is that right?
Oh my God.
And then a second letter of 19. She
First letter 19, second letter 21.
All right. She was in the news. She had a newspaper picture with her laying down with this nursing Irish setter with all the pups and a picture of Baba behind it. She's a big dog lover. Well, you guys, she's obviously whetted our appetites. Let's just let her carry on. I think anybody who didn't hear her this morning, hold on to your hat.
Was there anyone who wasn't here this morning?
No, you have to go back and start again.
No, I can't.
Recap.
No, you need a recap of meeting Baba. Baba telling her I'm God.
I should
Then go
do
on
that
from
again.
there. Just to brief what he said. Because people weren't here. People weren't here. Some people.
Well,
Just meet Baba and then meet Marty.
Just do it.
yeah. Read Lord Mayor. So, for the few that weren't here, my ex-husband Mick and I, we met Baba, who had told us not to take drugs, and we stopped taking drugs, and he asked us to go home. And so after we left Baba, we had lunch with Adi's office, and then we took off. And the plan was to hitchhike to Europe and take a flight from Luxembourg to New York on Icelandic Airline, which was the cheapest way to go across the Atlantic. It was $100. And a propeller plane. It took 24 hours or something. So we thought, Baba said go, we would shoot across. India and Pakistan had been at war in 1965, and this was March of 66. And the Indian newspaper said that the Wagah border between India and Pakistan was going to open in 2 weeks. So we said, great, that's how we're going to go. And we got to Amritsar, the last town before Pakistan, and it said in the newspaper that the Indian border will be open. So we got to the border, and we were apparently the first people, because Indians cannot go to Pakistan, Pakistanis can't go to India. So the only people who cross that border are foreigners. And India exit stamp on our passport, we're ready to go. We get to the Pakistani side, and the Pakistani military leveled their AK-47s at us and told us no. So we were nowhere. We had to turn around, ask India to accept us again, and now what? And we made the news. We made the Hindustan Times. Pakis refused the first people to cross the border, and it was a big scene. So the only way to leave India was to fly from Amritsar in the Punjab to Kabul, and that was on Ariana Royal Afghan Airline. So there's one plane a week, and we had missed that. So we waited in Amritsar for that plane, and we went to the airport, and the plane came, and it has 16 seats. It's a DC-3. It sits like that. It's a propeller. And the people got off the plane, and the pilot said, I'm not going back today. So we went back to the hotel. We went the next day, and the next day, I think we taxied out to the runway, and there was no communication from Pakistan. The only way that India and Afghanistan could know how the weather was is that somebody ran out and looked at the Hindu Kush mountains or something. Pakistan wasn't talking. So the pilot, they called Kabul, and they said, no, not good. So we got taxied back to the hotel. The next day, I don't think we did anything. The following day, we got on the plane, and we took off. 2 propellers. Now the plane is not pressurized, so it cannot fly over the Hindu Kush. It has to fly through the passes, the Khyber Pass and all of that. So we're going, it takes hours. So we're flying across the Punjab, and down there's Pakistan that we knew so well. And then we're in the mountains, and there are the mountains. And all of a sudden, it turned black, and we could see nothing. Presumably the pilot could see nothing, and we dropped what seemed like thousands of feet. I don't know. We hit this pocket and we dropped. The Afghans are hitting the Allahu Akbar, and we are like, this is not going to happen here. So Mick and I looked at each other and we said, we're not going to crash, because Baba told us to go to the West and persuade young people from taking drugs. He didn't tell us that so we could dump in the Hindu Kush. Yes, so we're fine. We're fine. We are fine. So the pilot comes out, says, ladies and gentlemen, we've turned around. We'll land in Amritsar, India in, 4 hours and 20 minutes or something. So all of this, it took 3 weeks to leave India altogether. It was amazing. And eventually we got on the plane, we flew to Kabul. And we were so tired of it all that we basically took buses and trains all the way to Europe. We were tired of hitchhiking. We needed to go to America, which we did. We flew from Luxembourg to New York. We went to Illinois to visit Mick's family. We got a little puppy on a farm in Illinois, and we moved to Santa Barbara. And in Santa Barbara, we set up, we didn't have a shop, but we imported things from through Baba's brother Jal, who was sort of a wheeler dealer. We imported Indian shirts, these kurtas, and mirrored embroidery from Pakistan. And this was now 1966 summer, and so the hippie movement was in full swing. And we were in Santa Barbara, and we were kind of the holy rollers. We rented a house, and anyone could come and stay with us. There was a room underneath. It was like sort of the laundry room or something, where people stayed, and we sat there preaching Mayor Baba and the evils of drugs. And we turned so many people onto Baba. It was unbelievable. It was like the floodgates. Today, still, even sometimes I would meet people that say, I heard about Baba from you in Santa Barbara. I don't even know them. It was amazing. It wasn't us, it was obviously Baba, but we were really on fire. It was incredible, the amount of people that came and wanted to hear of Baba and stopped taking drugs because of us and what we told them. It was really very, very nice. So the entire time from when Baba first wrote and said, don't come to Ahmednagar, we were in constant correspondence with him. And we were really not aware so much of the fact that he was in seclusion, that we may be interfering with his inner work or whatever. We wrote about anything and everything. There'd be somebody who didn't want to stop taking drugs. Baba, so-and-so, he doesn't want to stop taking drugs. Baba wrote back, let him be, don't mention it again. Somebody came and said that you can't sleep in the same room with your dog because somehow the dog and the astral soul, when you're asleep, and your soul and they intermingle. Beloved Baba, do you think we should sleep in the same room with our dog? Baba writes back, says, it's fine, sleep in the same room with your dog. I mean, stuff like that. And he never said not to, and it never occurred to us not to. He was our guy, you know. I mean, anything you think of what to do and what to do next, you bounce off of Baba. And he answered. Adi would write and Erich would write, depending. So Baba had said, when you come to New York, meet Fred and Ella Winterfeld and Robert Dreyfus. And so when we came to New York, we met them, and Robert was there, and we had not met him before. We'd heard of him because he had seen Baba in November of '65. And so we were settled in Santa Barbara. We had a little house. Everything was fine. And Robert showed up. And he was on his way to the University of Hawaii. I think he was going to go to school there. So Robert sat there with us, and Mick and Robert started talking about the road. Oh, the road. Go on the road. And somehow they cooked this thing up that what really we should be doing is we should be back on the road, persuading people who are traveling like we have from taking drugs. Now, this isn't what Baba had told us to do. However, somehow Robert and Mick thought that it could be sort of parlayed that way. Now, I knew in my heart of hearts that this isn't what we're supposed to do. And so they wrote a letter to Baba to tell Baba that what we really want to do and what we really should be doing and what is really going to be much more successful is us to be back on the road in Asia. Back on the road, yes, to persuade people from taking drugs. And by the way, we want to come to visit you again, and so we'll travel there and end up seeing you again. Now, I knew this isn't what we were supposed to do, but I was chicken, I guess, and I signed the letter with them. Now, I was convinced that Baba was going to say, "Are you kidding? That's not what I told you to do. You're supposed to stay there and do that." Baba wrote back and said, "I have no objections," which was immediately translated by Mick and Robert into, "We have Baba's order to go back on the road." And I cried and I made a scene. "I don't want to go." "Well, why did you sign the letter?" "I don't know. I thought he was going to say no. I want to stay here. I don't want." I'm tired, man. We've been doing this for years already, you know. And so we were friends, you know, with Chapman and Cohen and people like that, of course, that we had met in the States. And we got this letter from Alan Cohen, who tells us that this isn't what you're supposed to do. When Baba tells you to do something, you do that. If you don't want to do that and you persuade him to change his mind, it's lost. The power of his work is lost. And Mick got really upset that this Alan is messing in my life affairs and how dare he tell me what to do. In fact, Mick got so upset he wrote to Baba and told Baba, "Oh, this guy is telling us what we should be doing." So it was a little dicey. But anyway, Baba then wrote and said, we wrote back and told him that we're selling all our belongings and we're going back on the road. And he wrote back and and should we, is this okay? We sort of asked if this was okay. And that letter he wrote back and he said is immaterial whether you stay or go. So that again was translated into, we have his charge of going and turning the world off of drugs. We sold everything we owned. We packed our dog into our car. We drove the car to New York, where we sold the car. And our first guinea pig, as it were, was Mick Hamilton's brother Tom, who was an addict, a drug addict. And so Tom said he wanted to come along. It was that only if you're clean. So we flew to Frankfurt. We bought a Volkswagen bus with Robert. And we bought a Volkswagen bus. And Robert, Tom, Mick and I, and we brought our dog, which we were going to give to Baba. The plan. Baba said, "Do not enter India until the 1st of November 1967. And this was now October or November of 66. So we had a year. And we said, "Oh, Baba, no problem. We have a lot of work to do." Now Baba was on board. All this work you're doing and the people you're persuading from taking drugs, Baba now was very supportive. Once it was all done and it was happening, Baba was writing to us very supportive. And we packed into this Volkswagen bus with the dog, and the motor's in the back, so we built this platform out of wood on 2 legs, and Tom and Mick were sleeping, Tom and Robert were sleeping this way, and Mick and the dog and I were sleeping this way. We lived in this Volkswagen bus, of course, and Robert, on the first day leaving Frankfurt, Robert was at the wheel and he parked for the night, the first night. And in the morning we get up and Robert managed to park on top of a pass in the Alps. We were up to here in snow. It was very shortly thereafter that Mick decreed Robert will never drive again. He was not a good driver. So we stopped. I think the first sort of major stop was in Istanbul. And we were the holy rollers again. We knew where the cafe houses or the tea shops were, where all the people who had been like us, who were traveling and hitchhiking. We knew where they congregate. And we would tell them about the evils of drugs and the wonders of Meher Baba. And again, it was very successful. People were listening, or whether they stopped taking drugs or not, I don't know. But we had a momentum. And in Istanbul, we ran into an Australian heroin addict who we had known from India before, and Tom decided he's going to leave us now and went off with the heroin addict. That was the end of Tom. So, for the time being anyway, so Tom left, and with this junkie. And we went from Istanbul south because it was so cold, and we went to the Middle East. We went to Syria. We something broke in the car in Syria, in Aleppo, and we had to have a new piece actually made from a blacksmith, and it was $10 for the piece and the repair. And we were waylaid in Aleppo for a while, and then from there we went to Jordan. And, we went to the Jordanese embassy in Damascus to get a visa for Jordan, and they looked at Robert and Mick with their long hair. They both had long hair and beards, and they refused us a visa. They said, no, you can't look like that. You have to look like the average Arab on the street, which was a joke that we kind of never forget. How do you look like the average Arab on the street? So what we did, and this was Robert's idea, it was very crafty, it was before Christmas, and Mick and Robert bought Arab headgears and wrapped themselves all in these Arab headgears, and we showed up at the border without a visa, and they didn't want to let us in, and Robert explained that we are going for pilgrimage to Bethlehem for our prophet, the birth of our prophet Jesus in Bethlehem. And we're wholly on Hajj to Bethlehem for our prophet, and they couldn't refuse us. They let us in. And we stayed there it was before the 67 war, so the old Jerusalem was in Jordan still, and all that area was still in Jordan. And we once again had all sorts of people that would listen to us, and that we would talk about drugs. And then we went to Kuwait because we had heard that you could donate blood, and they paid quite a bit of money, something like, I don't know, $100 per person or something. We went to Kuwait to give blood, and from Kuwait we were going to go back up through Iran on to Pakistan. And we were so out of it. We had a map of the Middle East, and a road from Kuwait through Basra and through Iraq and all that was way out of the way. So there was an oil pipeline. We said, hey, let's just drive along the old pipeline that goes straight up to Shiraz. We just drove across the desert in our VW bus. No road, nothing. We came to a tribe, the Kashgai tribe. It's some nomadic tribe in southern Iran, and we stayed with them in tents, and they actually tried to bargain for me. They wanted to give me some camels. They wanted to trade, and we stayed in these tents, and they had so many rugs. They had those incredible Persian rugs. They had like 10 or 15 of them. That's it was really something. And we went to Shiraz, and we went to the tomb of Hafiz, and we had gone to Konya before to the tomb of Rumi, and we went to the tomb of Hafiz, and we were always writing to Baba about everything, and we wrote to Baba, and we said we went to the tomb of Hafiz, and he wrote back, said, no more tombs, don't go to tombs. Yeah, I didn't want us to go to tombs. So anyway, we went to Karachi, and we met Minu Karas and Adi and Rhoda Dubash, and Minu and Franny Karas. They were Baba's stalwarts in Karachi. And what we didn't know is that Minu Karas had the order to tell Baba everything that happened. So we went there and we told Minu that we're bringing the dog. When we're going to see Baba, we're going to give the dog to Baba as a gift. And next letter from Baba, and when you come to see me, do not bring your dog. So Minu had routed us out. And so now November 1st, this is January, and we had a lot of time, and we were very close to India. So we drove we rented a house in Lahore, 16 miles from the Indian border. Meanwhile, Baba had put the date to January 1st, 1968. He postponed the date. And we drove to Kabul through the Khyber Pass, and we sold the Volkswagen bus in Kabul because we now had a house in Lahore that we rented, a very primitive native style place. And we got snowed in Kabul. We were stuck in Kabul for 3 weeks because the Khyber Pass was closed. There was so much snow with the dog, and what a scene. Oh, and meanwhile, I forgot, in Karachi, we heard about this American that was getting ready to be repatriated to the United States. He'd given his passport to the embassy to be sent back home. One Tom. Brother Tom. So we went to the American consulate in Karachi, and we bailed out Brother Tom and paid for whatever he owed them, and he came and joined us again. And we had to dry him up again, Brother Tom. So now Baba had postponed it until January. It was January, and we were 16 miles from the Indian border, and we had a year. And there's only one road that's open, the Firozpur Road, between India and Pakistan. There's only one border crossing, and that was on the road off of which we lived. So everyone who went to India or came from India had to almost literally pass our house. And before much time passed, our house was known from London to Singapore, and everybody who hitchhiked came and stayed with us. And somewhere along the line we decided that if we make the rule of no drugs, then we can't reach them. They won't want to stay there, they won't come. So we're cool, we're hip, we can handle all that. So we allowed these people that stayed with us to take drugs in our house. And they came. We had sometimes 10, 12 people stay there. And there was this one Swedish guy who was shooting up heroin. I mean, it was a zoo. And we had these big posters of Baba on the wall, and the 10 states of God, and all this. And we're sitting in the middle of this madness telling everybody about Meher Baba. At one point, the Pakistani secret police came because they thought we were spies. We were somehow preaching this Indian stuff, and therefore we had some connection to India. And we loaded the guy up with a bunch of Baba books, and he never came back. Minu Cross had given us a lot of pamphlets and things, and Mick and Robert actually went for Baba's birthday in February to Karachi. I stayed with the dog and with Tom, and I think they spoke at Baba's birthday party in Karachi. So here we were, surrounded by this insanity, telling these people how they should not take drugs and they should listen to Mayor Baba. And it is getting hotter and hotter. Lahore, without a doubt, is one of the hottest places on earth. We put the thermometer in the sun one time, and by 8 o'clock in the morning, it was 125 degrees. It was unbelievable. Lahore is unbelievable. And it started getting so hot. And the water, we had water twice a day for an hour, but the water tank was on the roof, so the afternoon water was boiling. And the Tonga horses were falling over dead in the bazaar of heat. It was unbearable, and we were sitting there. And then Baba postponed our coming into India indefinitely. I will let you know when my seclusion is over. So we sat there, and one day, one of our many drug-taking house guests was sitting there smoking, and Robert said, "Are you going to pass that thing?" And I sat next to Robert, and Robert passed it to me, and we got stoned with these people at 130 degrees or something. And so that started. And we did that for a couple of days, and we were feeling very guilty. So we wrote to Baba and we confessed. And Baba wrote back and was so unbelievably loving. He said, "You've done such great work for me." Can you imagine? We're sitting there and we've done great work for him. And how much he loves us, and don't think about it again. I forgive you. Don't do it again. And so we stopped for, I don't know, a week or two, and we started again. And then we wrote to him again, and he wrote back, and this time it's a little bit more stern. Baba does not capital underlined, ever want you capital underlined, big letters, you know. It was written by Erich. He was more serious in that letter. But so unbelievably loving, how wonderful we are, and how much he loves us, and what great work we were doing, and to forget it and don't think about it again, don't dwell on it and don't do it again. It was just unbelievable, the love and the forgiveness, and then we got a letter that says, Mayor Baba, a form letter, a printed form letter. Mayor Baba no longer entertains any correspondence. He's in such, sent by Adi, he's in such strict seclusions, do not write anymore unless you have a change of address. So here we were, and I think we had still continued to smoke, so we still had to confess the latest faux pas there, and we couldn't write to him. So Robert said, "I think I'm going to leave. I'm going to go back to Europe." Oh, Tom felt it was not his order not to enter India, because Baba had never told him that. He wasn't really part of that. So Tom said, "I'm going to India," and left and went to India. And Robert said, "I'm going back to Europe. I'll be back." Somehow we expected Baba to, once he's out of seclusion, to say, "Now you can come." We were waiting to see him again. And Robert went back to Europe, and Mick and I stayed in Lahore with the dog. And within very short time, it became apparent that both of us had hepatitis, that we had somehow managed to contract. And we got a letter from Robert. He was in Istanbul in the hospital with hepatitis, and we got a letter from Tom, who had let himself be repatriated from New Delhi, and he was in Illinois in the hospital with hepatitis. And Mick was much sicker than me, and I had to hospitalize him. And I was not well, but Mick was really, really sick. He was at the Muhammad Ali Jinnah Hospital in Lahore, and the low point of his weight, he weighed 87 pounds. And he's about 5'8", 5'9". And I didn't know what to do. And he got pleurisy, which is something where the lungs fill with water. And I called Minu Karas and I said, I don't know what to do with it. He's dying. And Minu said, bring him. So I went to the hospital and found a wheelchair and sort of unplugged him and sprung him out of the hospital. I wasn't allowed to do that, but I just took him and brought him to the airport, and we flew from Lahore to Karachi and stayed with Minu. Now, all along, of course, Minu was able to apparently still write to Baba and tell him what's going on. And we stayed with Minu, and he nursed Mick back to life. And at that point, we also had run out of money. And so the Karachi group passed the hat around and gave us enough money to fly us to Istanbul after Mick got well. And we flew to Istanbul and we took a train to Frankfurt, and we stayed in Frankfurt until we got well, and I got a job. In fact, we both got a job there in Frankfurt, and we stayed for, well, from this fall of almost a year until April of 68. But when we got to Frankfurt, we had moved now. And so we wrote and we said we have a change of address, and we would like to tell Baba something. And we received a letter back, and Adi said, Baba allows you to tell him anything. So we wrote everything we could possibly pack in, whatever had ever ailed us or we wanted to know or tell him. And there was a long letter, and we got a letter back from Baba. It was 10 points, and he answered everything in detail. And once again we confessed that we had not obeyed him, and he wrote back again how much he loved us and how much it was just amazing, the forgiveness and the love that he had. And eventually we went to the United States, and the German government came after me and said, there's this old thing, and I was supposed to go there and have this investigation and all of this. So we very quickly raised enough money and left and flew to New York and came across the country and settled in Berkeley. And I started after a while I started doing drug work, and I did drug counseling and drug work for years. Actually, I was the in-house drug counselor at John F. Kennedy High School in Richmond, a very, very ghetto kind of school in Richmond, California. And Robert lived there, and Rick and Alan. I worked with Alan for some time. And Baba, at some point we received some messages about drug work, but we never had any more direct correspondence until, of course, we were invited to the 69 Darshan, and then Baba dropped the body. So that's basically it. I know it's not enough time, but I don't know how else to embellish it. So are there any questions?
What age were you at that point? At the end of
when I met Baba, I was 21, and when we lived in Lahore, I was 22. And Mick was 2 years older, than me, so he was 24.
What was the second book that he told you besides God Speaks?
Stay with God, Francis Brabazon.
Great for reading.
Yeah, it's a wonderful book.
So what were you telling when you were
talking with people about Baba and not doing drugs, what actually were you saying?
Well, that it was harmful spiritually and mentally and physically. And a lot of the people that live like that on the road seem to have some spiritual bent. You know, in the 60s, the whole guru concept was really in, and at that point already, you know, the drop in, tune in, drop out, or whatever it was called, the whole Timothy Leary Alpert thing was already going on. Alan Cohen was a student of Leary's at Harvard, and they were taking LSD as psychological experiments, and people were actually, drugs seemed to have an allure of some kind of a spiritual experience, and so that was incorporated. You know, the Beatles had the Maharishi or whoever, so there was that aspect too, and along, of course, with the physical problems. I don't know, was kind of Baba was sort of helping, I think.
Do you think that Robert's early death and ill health related back to Lahore and not
Well, when Robert, not to be able to tell his story, but when Robert met Baba, he had some stomach thing, and Dr. Goher was to give him a pill, and Robert took this pill that Dr. Goher gave him, and he said that his stomach never got well, and that he had the dysentery and those problems. And when we lived in Lahore, this is a little bit graphic, but our house did not have plumbing, and it was done in an area there, and the sweeper came twice a day to sweep things up and take it away and wash things down. And it was fairly obvious to us that someone was passing blood, and that was Robert. And he got so sick that we took him to the doctor in Lahore. And later, of course, when Baba dropped the body, Robert was in the hospital in Berkeley, and I mean, how many times he had the last rites read. You know, Robert was always really ill, but it eventually did, I think, start in India. Yeah.
Two questions. After that final long letter to Baba, did you go back to drugs? And quite separate question, would you share with us your experiences of the 69 Darshan without Baba physically present, since you did have the opportunity to get those kisses in?
I did not go back to drugs.
Good.
Others I can't speak for. 69.
What made the difference? You know, because Baba
What
had
made the
forgiven
difference
you,
for me?
so many times about the drugs, but you ended up going back, and he'd forgive you, and you'd go back. So what made the difference that you didn't go back?
I think it was my new peer group in Berkeley, all the Baba people. I spent a lot of time with Rick, who eventually, after I left, Mick was my friend for 3 years, and Robert, Alan, and there were a lot of other people. The Baba group doing drugs was not part of that, was not an option that one would even consider at that time. You know, when we were all so excited about going to see him again. You see, the darshan was announced long before he dropped the body. We were going there to see him.
Right.
So the idea of, oh, well, now I'm going to start smoking dope again, that just wasn't part of my consciousness, you know. Yeah, and it never returned. I never had any interest in that again.
And then the 69 Darshan, what was it like?
Well, that was sort of interesting. One thing that reminds me is there was this guy in Guru Prasad. I had never seen him. I didn't know who he was. I never heard of him. But he didn't speak English very well. But he kept following Mick and I to apparently want to meet us, and it was Bao. But I knew who Bao was. And apparently what happened is when we saw Baba on March 7th, Bao was the night watchman, and after he was finished his night watch, and Baba would go to the Manli Hall at Merzat, Bao went and did whatever it was Bao did. Evidently during this, he told us later, during the day, Baba would say to Bao, did you meet them? And Bao would say, no, Baba, I was riding or eating or sleeping. Oh, you were sleeping, you didn't meet them. Oh. So did you saw that such love? Oh, you missed them. They were so up, but you missed. Oh, you were sleeping. And Bao apparently, Baba rest poor Bao all day long. So when the 69 Dasha came, he really wanted to meet us, but we didn't know who he was, and we were sort of trying to shake him because I didn't know who he was, and we sort of tried to who's this guy trying to get away. Because we wanted to be with Mani and Erich, and
The Mandalay.
Yes. Well, we learned his very important role, but that was funny. There's another story. We have a friend that we met in Santa Barbara. He came to Baba by us telling him about Baba in Santa Barbara. His name was Jerry Paulson, and when we were in Frankfurt after coming back. And the winter that we were in Frankfurt, 66 to 67, suddenly Jerry Paulson arrived at our house in Frankfurt on his way to India to meet Baba. And we said, Jerry, you cannot do that. He will not see anyone. When we went to see Baba in March, there was a big billboard on the approach road to the gate in 3 languages that Mayor Baba will see no one. He's in very strict seclusion. It was like a billboard on the road to Merzat. And we said, he will not see you. You can't do that. He said, I don't care, I'm going. And Jerry was really tall and gangly, and apparently Fred and Ella Winterfeld said, you going like this and overland in Europe and Turkey and all? It's winter. And Fred gave him his winter coat where the sleeves ended up like here, and it was sort of way too small on Jerry. And Jerry was I don't know if any of you ever heard of him, Jerry Paulson. He had to go. He was driven, and he went to India, and Baba always told him he will not see him, and he was in correspondence with Adi, he will not see him. And Jerry said, I'm not leaving. And he eventually ended up in Calcutta, and he had no money. And I know every once in a while we'd send him a little money, and other friends too, I guess. And he lived on the streets of Calcutta through the monsoon and through unbelievable circumstances. And eventually he ended up in Delhi, and hashish was much cheaper in Pakistan than in India. It's kind of a Muslim thing, and so they were Westerners, because they're the only ones who could cross the border. There were Westerners that were running hashish from Pakistan to India to make, I don't know, maybe 100 rupees or something. Not a lot of money, but people did that. They carried it across the border. So they had done it, many of them apparently had done it so many times that it started looking weird in their passport that they kept going back and forth. So these people, whoever they were, met Jerry in Delhi, and he had a clean passport, and he was so poor they talked him into go make a hash run to Pakistan, and Jerry agreed, and he was going to make, I don't know, 200-300 rupees out of it, not much, and he agreed. And the moment he agreed, he got a cable from Baba saying he wants to see him.
Wow.
And Jerry said, sorry guys, I can't do that, and he went to see Baba. And he saw Baba, I just looked it up in Lord Mayor, on the 9th of October 1968. Late, very, very late in the game. And
So Jerry?
yeah, Jerry Paulson. And the story, I mean, this is Jerry's story, but what was interesting about the story was that he was very worried about the draft and being drafted to go to Vietnam. And he discussed that with Baba, and Baba said, do everything legally you can to stay out. Legally. But if you have to go, then know that I go with you and I will be with you. But my favorite part of the story is when Baba said, do you have any questions? Jerry was really sort of guileless and innocent. He was a real sweet guy. Jerry said, "Yeah, Baba, do you know Mikanushi Hamilton?" Like, you're from LA, do you know? Yeah, do you know Mikanushi Hamilton? And Baba went, "Real well." So when Jerry told us that, I was thrilled. What a cool deal is that? Yeah. Yeah.
You were talking this morning about your interest in like the existentialists and Nietzsche and so on. Did you have that same kind of interest in Baba's writings, or?
Yes, I've read everything. I didn't. It was a sort of a newfound hunger, and I read God Speaks 5 times, and I think I read all of Baba's. But then at some point, I'm not sure when it happened, that I kind of lost interest in reading, because I'd read everything he wrote, and then these unending books that people write about him, I kind of sort of, I don't know, I can't really. I read some of them, but all these tomes, have I read Lord Mayhare? No, not really. But Baba's words, yes, definitely, I have read.
What was your reaction when you found out that Baba had dropped his body?
Oh, wow. I couldn't understand it. I mean, it was so big. For us, even when we were not allowed to write anymore, it's like we were sort of lost. We had run everything by him, decisions we made, and even just to write, to say we loved him or something, and we got answers to all of them. I have, 30, 40, 50 letters, maybe. Lots. It just was constant. And all of a sudden, for all this to stop, and we were sort of had to, I guess, grow up and stand on our own or something. I don't know. I remember driving to the Sufi Center, where it was announced that we should meet there the morning, when that Baba dropped the body. Because also the question was, what are we going to do about darshan? We had already paid our airfare and everything. And I remember driving across the Bay Bridge and thinking, look at all these people. They don't know that God dropped the body. It's so monumental, and everybody's just, And in the one time that it hit me really was sitting in Mandalay Hall, the day that we went to Marazat. There was one day of the 69 darshan we were allowed to go to Marazat. And I remember I just sort of sat there in the same space, and I looked at the empty chair, and I got really upset. I really missed him. Because I wanted to see him again,
Ursula, when you went to Guru Prasad for the 69 darshan, I saw some nice photographs of you up close with Francis. So he remembered you from before?
I don't know if he did then. I chatted with him some then, but something interesting happened with Francis, actually, when I went with Phyllis to Australia, and Francis was there. It was 1980 or 81, yeah. I was really intrigued by Francis. I really wanted to spend time with him, so I devised this thing where I bought him an azalea in town, a potted azalea, and then I told him that this is cold, raining. I told him that I had to water it every day. And so every day I went there to water the plant. And to sit with Francis, who sat there, and I was nervous, and I remember the first day that I sat there, I don't know what I did or what I was talking about, and suddenly he leveled his extremely blue eyes on me, and he said, "Do you ever shut up?" I learned very quickly. So then I would sit, after watering this poor azalea, I was drowning, I would sit with Francis, and I would say nothing, and he would say nothing, and he would say, "Isn't it amazing how tall and straight the gum trees are?" I mean, the guy was totally zen, And at some point he did seem to have some interest in who I was, and I had been a Sufi, and I had left the Sufi order, and he was very intrigued by that. He wanted to know all that I could tell him of there was a change of guard from Ursula to James Mackay, and he was very interested in that, and we talked a lot about all that. And somehow in the course of talking with him about, that I had met Baba and all, he suddenly looked at me and he said, "It was you who wrote those letters?" I was like, "Those letters?" I felt so embarrassed because it never had occurred to me that the Mandali were doing everything they could to keep Baba happy and keep him well during this excruciating seclusion he went. And here they did everything they could, and those letters kept coming of these idiots that were out there somewhere totally disobeying him, and then we did it again, and yet, I mean, they probably would have smacked us if they could. And then Baba said, "Oh, how much I love them, and what wonderful." Write that to Eric, tell them how much I love them. They must have thought, what is up with that? And Francis, he remembered. He said, "Oh, yes, I remember those letters." So
But he liked his red cashmere scarf.
Oh, yes, I have a photo of that. It was a hand. It went away. Yeah.
So this morning when you spoke to, when you met Baba and you had
Mary, your stuff. Sorry.
the experience of him as God.
Well, it wasn't an experience. It was just a...
Oh, that's right, the conviction.
Yeah, I mean, you said it.
Okay,
yeah. I didn't...
You said it and
have
you had
experiences.
believed it.
Yes.
Okay. So has that changed as far as your relationship to Meher Baba and who he is?
Well, I never had a relationship with him before,
And
so...
from that time, as you've lived another...
You mean, did he get let to be less God? Is that what you mean? No, not at all.
It didn't change.
No, he became more and more familiar. He was, the letters, he was very caring. He was like sort of father, friend.
Divine companion.
Yeah, well, not a companion to me, but somebody who cared immensely, and he wrote to us about our health and what we should do, and when we had hepatitis, after Minu told him, he said we should have sugarcane juice. It was funny, he wrote to Germany and said have sugarcane juice. There's no sugarcane juice in Germany. Yeah, and he took great care. Yeah.
Thank you.
When did you return to Mehrabad after 69?
1977.
And can you share with us any memories of the Mandali in those particular days?
Well, I really liked Adi because he was the one who drove us to see Baba, Adi K, and he was the one that did a lot of the correspondence between us and Baba. So the letters were written by either Erich or Adi, and then he came to the West. He came in 70, I think, or something.
He and
Yeah,
together.
yeah. And we spent time together, so it was really nice being there. We stayed at Vilu's, there was no Pilgrim Center yet, and to hang out with Adi and have a peg. He liked the peg. And sit with him and just talk with him. But to me also...
She means whiskey, young ones, not...
yeah, right, little brandy he liked. I really enjoyed the women. And I was sort of in awe of Mera. I was always she was intimidating to me, but I think I felt very comfortable around Mani. So, yeah, and then of course then one by one they all went, and so I haven't been back to India since 1992.
Wow.
I somehow am not drawn there. I would love if I could just be in the samadhi. That would be fantastic. But all what is happening and all this stuff and going without any of the mandali, I can't. I don't really want to, So.
But Ursula had a big fuss made over her because she had the smallest baby ever born alive at the time in Alter Bates Hospital, and a whole new focus came on to Ursula and her 1 pound
11 ounces.
11 ounce baby.
Wow.
Well, you see, at some point in one of our multifarious letters, we had read the discourses and how we are to be celibate, or not celibate, but abstain and all that. We wrote to Baba and we said, we're using birth control. What do you want us to do? If you don't want we don't want a child. We're not ready to have a child. So what should we do? And Baba wrote back and said for us to use physical means of birth control until we are ready to have a child, and then return to physical means of birth control. So that we did. We had physical means of birth control. And eventually in 1969 I left Mick for reasons that are... Did you hear it? Oh, you missed it! I'm sorry. Yes.
It's called divine intervention.
So yes, I had my reasons, and I'm not here to slam Mick, so I'm not going to go into that. I left, and which wasn't an easy thing to do, and I discussed it with the Mandali, and I was encouraged to live my life. So there was this have a child, and it was clear that my connection with Baba was my connection with Baba, and Mick's connection was his connection. So when you are stable in life, certainly I was never stable in life with Mick, and so then I remarried, and eventually we were married for 7 years or so before I found myself pregnant. And I found out I was pregnant in India, and Mara was the first one I told. And she was very sweet. And then, to make a long story short, my son was born 4 months premature. He was born at 25 weeks of gestation and weighed 1 pound 11 ounces at birth weight. And then he lost weight. When he was 2 weeks old, he weighed 1 pound 6 ounces. When he was a month old, he was back to his birth weight. And this was unbelievably supported by the women Mandali. It was so incredible. Cables, Mani called one night.
Oh my God.
She called. I picked up the phone, and it's Mani. Wow. So
call India in those days.
no, not easily. No. So yes. Anyway, that was all of that. Now he's 29 years old and quite normal for the most part, as normal as we all are. Yes.
Do you ever sometimes just ponder, what an exceptional experience Baba gave you to meet him in person?
I do.
Like, why me?
I do.
Why me?
I do, and I don't know. I do. In fact, the other day, on the 15th of August, was Rick Chapman's anniversary of meeting Baba, and we talked on the telephone. We talk a lot. And we were talking on the phone, and it's almost inconceivable, And at the time, it was perfectly normal. And when we came to New York, we went to a Monday night meeting. And John Bass at the door. What do you want? Nobody could just come in here. John Bass was kind of a jerk. We said, well, we're just coming from Marazat. Oh, you're coming from Marazat. So we walked in, and there was this all Baba people were old. Except for Alan Cohen and Rick Chapman. Yeah. And there was these old ladies, and one said to me, so how long were you with Baba? And I said, 5 minutes. And one looked at the other and said, ha, Baba must have really loved him 5 minutes. Did you hear that? I said, good Lord. There was no one who had not met Baba.
Right.
Everybody went in 62 or 58 or whatever. The onrush of young people like us had not happened yet. And so it didn't seem so unusual, but it sort of gets to be more unusual the older I get, the more special, I should say, it feels. And I don't know, see, the thing I don't know is that people who have the conviction that he's the avatar, I will never know if I could have that. If he hadn't looked at me and told me. So I'm really in awe of people who are able to have that conviction, and I don't have that grace or whatever it is to know if I could trust that he is that, so.
Well, we have people like you.
You could tell us what you said, yeah.
Anyway.
You mentioned that if you were to go back to India, you would love to do it if you would just sit in Baba's samadhi. And so that just, for me, begs the question, is for you, sitting in Baba's samadhi, in some way similar in feeling or something to seeing him in person?
Not really. I'm sorry, I'm honest. No. I mean, I very much enjoy sitting in the samadhi and having his feeling, but to me it wasn't the same. And I also am a little bit selfish at wanting to be in India. Part of my going to India was really hanging out with the mandali. I really enjoyed that. And so, yes, being in the samadhi, but also I like that sort of human touch there was. Okay, that's it. Well,
Did your child live?
he's 21, he's 29 years old. Yes, yes. And Mara,
Mara's boy.
called him Mara's boy. Mara wanted to meet him when he was 3. And Goer was, oh, no, we can't do that. Oh my God, no, how healthy is he? And we had to pass Goer's muster before we were allowed to bring him. But Mara said, bring him, and she wanted to meet him. And the thing that was amazing about that was, I had told her I was pregnant, and then we wrote to them and told them that, I went into premature labor. Actually, there were 2 of them. One aborted itself about 6 weeks before Eric was born, so he sort of hung in there. There were actually 2. But the mandali knew this, and I corresponded with him. I was in bed for 3 weeks. Eventually, they put my head here and my feet here, stand her on her head. Yeah. Maybe he won't climb out, It was a scene, but every day was closer to being able to survive. 3 weeks prior, he would not have been able. 24 weeks is the lowest I gather that they have ever kept alive, and he was born at 25 weeks. In California, I think you could abort up to 23 weeks. So he was an embryo. His head was the size of an egg, and his legs were like that. But we were so enamored with him that we sent all these pictures. At one point, Eric said, now we had to have an extra archival building put on just for the photos. We were really rather indulgent. So when and Mara, she would pray for him. And so when we brought him when he was 3, I used to like to sit with Mara at off times to just chat. And I said